The Afghan sun beat down on the tarmac at Bagram airfield with the kind of heat that made the air shimmer and dance. It was September 2014, and the ceremony unfolding on the scorched concrete had been performed too many times for too many fallen warriors in too many years of endless war. 15-year-old Maya Sterling stood perfectly still as the honor guard folded the American flag with mechanical precision, each crease sharp, each movement deliberate. The fabric that had draped her father's casket transformed into a tight triangle of red, white, and blue, a geometry of grief. Master Sergeant James Sterling had been the finest sniper in the Army Rangers. Everyone said so. The chaplain said it. The commanders said it. The soldiers who served with him said it through tears they tried to hide behind sunglasses and stoic faces. 1,500 meters, one shot, 32 lives saved. These were the numbers they repeated like a prayer, like somehow mathematics could make sense of a man reduced to a flag in a folded uniform. Maya didn't cry. She had learned from her father that stillness was a weapon, that patience was power, that the body could be trained to obey the mind even when the heart was screaming. She stood ramrod straight in her black dress, her mother beside her barely holding together, and accepted the flag from a general whose name she would never remember. The crowd began to disperse. Soldiers returned to war. Family returned to grief. Maya stood alone near the casket, one hand resting on the polished wood, when footsteps approached from behind. "Your father was the finest shooter I ever served with." The voice belonged to a man in his late 40s, weathered in the way that came from too many deployments and too many close calls. His uniform bore the insignia of a lieutenant colonel, and his eyes carried the particular exhaustion of someone who had watched good men die. "Lieutenant Colonel David Morgan," he said, extending his hand. "I was with your father on his last operation." Maya shook his hand. Her grip was firm despite her age, despite her grief. Her father had taught her that. Morgan reached into his pocket and pulled out a set of dog tags. The metal caught the harsh Afghan sunlight, throwing brief stars across the tarmac. James Sterling's name stamped into steel. "He'd want you to have these," Morgan said, placing them in her palm. The tags were still warm from his pocket. 1,500 meters, under fire. The official record will say 1,450, but your father and I both know the truth. 1,500 meters exactly. I ranged it myself. Maya's fingers closed around the tags. They're lying about the distance? Not lying, rounding down. The brass thought the actual number was unverifiable. Your father never bothered to correct them. He didn't care about records or recognition. Morgan paused, studying her face with an intensity that suggested he was looking for something specific. He cared about the work, about doing it right, about teaching others to do the same. "I'm going to be a sniper," Maya said. The words came out steady, certain, not a question or a hope, but a statement of inevitable fact. Like him. Morgan nodded slowly. A slight smile touched the corners of his mouth. "He said you would, talked about you constantly, showed everyone videos of you at competitions. You were 12 years old, out shooting adults 3 times your age." He took a step back, squared his shoulders. "When you're ready, find me. I'll be waiting." He walked away across the tarmac, his shadow long in the afternoon sun, leaving Maya alone with her father's dog tags and a promise she intended to keep. The words appeared on screen like a rifle shot. 11 years later. The California morning broke cool and clear over Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado, the kind of dawn that made the Pacific Ocean look like hammered silver and turned the mountains in the distance into purple silhouettes against a brightening sky. The base was already awake, already moving with the purposeful rhythm of warriors preparing for another day of turning civilians into operators and operators into legends. A transport vehicle rolled through the main gate, kicking up dust that hung in the still air. The truck moved with deliberate slowness toward the Special Operations Training Facility, its single passenger invisible behind tinted windows. Security waved it through checkpoint after checkpoint until it finally stopped outside the administrative building. The door opened. A boot met pavement with purpose. Staff Sergeant Marcus Kane stood in the shade of the armory entrance, coffee in hand, watching the new arrival with the particular intensity of someone who had learned the hard way that first impressions were often wrong, but always important. At 38, Marcus carried himself with the coiled readiness of a man who had seen combat and survived by never fully relaxing. A scar ran from his left shoulder down across his collarbone, visible at the edge of his t-shirt. Shrapnel from an IED 3 years ago. But the deeper scar was invisible, the one from watching Tommy bleed out 5 years earlier. New transfer, said the man beside him. Chief Petty Officer Brennan Doyle was 48 and weathered like driftwood, his face a map of deployments spanning 3 decades. His eyes held the particular calm of someone who had made peace with mortality. Qualified expert across all categories, scored in the top percentile on every metric. Marcus took a long drink of coffee that had gone lukewarm an hour ago. Name? Sterling. M. Sterling. The coffee cup stopped halfway to Marcus's mouth. His jaw tightened. James Sterling's kid? Brennan nodded, his expression carefully neutral. Brass wants smooth integration. No special treatment, but also no hazing. The name carries weight. Marcus set his cup down on the concrete ledge with more force than necessary. The Sterling name doesn't earn automatic respect here, not on my team. From across the compound, 2 more figures emerged from the team common area. Corporal Garrett Voss was 28 and built like someone who spent his off hours in the gym punishing himself for sins he couldn't name. His face carried the permanent skepticism of someone who trusted actions over words. Beside him, Lance Corporal Holden Ramsey looked younger than his 25 years, eager and cocky in equal measure. "That's the legacy case?" Garrett asked, nodding toward the transport vehicle where a figure was gathering gear. "Daddy's reputation got Junior this assignment? Let's see if the son can actually shoot," Holden said, grinning, "or if he's just riding a famous name." The new arrival emerged from the vehicle carrying 2 pieces of luggage. The first was a rifle case, matte black and worn at the handle from years of use. The second was a military footlocker, olive drab and battered, with a nameplate that caught the morning light. Master Sergeant J. Sterling, 1st SFODD. The figure moved with economy and precision, every motion deliberate, no wasted energy. The team watched from a distance, making assumptions based on a name and a legacy, seeing what they expected to see rather than what was actually there. Commander Nathan Pierce sat behind his desk reviewing the morning's intelligence briefs when the knock came. "Enter," he called without looking up. The door opened and Corporal M. Sterling stepped through. Pierce glanced up and did a visible double-take, his professional composure cracking for just a fraction of a second before reasserting itself. "Corporal Sterling," he said, standing and extending his hand across the desk. "I was expecting—" He caught himself. "Welcome to the unit." "Thank you, sir." The handshake was firm, professional, direct eye contact. No challenge in the gaze, but no submission either. Pierce gestured to the chair across from him, and both sat. He pulled the personnel file closer, scanning details he had reviewed 3 times already, but somehow seeing differently now. "Your file is exceptional. Expert marksmanship ratings across every category. 3 national championships in precision rifle shooting. Your instructors at sniper school had remarkable things to say." "I do my best, sir." Pierce stood and walked to the wall where a single-framed plaque hung among commendations and unit citations, a record that had stood for 30 years. Master Sergeant James Sterling, 1,450 meters, 1994. "Your father," Pierce said quietly. The word hung in the air like smoke. "Yes, sir. I grew up with that story." Maya Sterling's voice remained measured, controlled. "He used to tell me about the shot, the wind conditions, the calculations. He made it sound like mathematics and meditation at the same time. Pierce turned back to face her. This team has been together for 5 years. They're tight. They've developed their own rhythm, their own trust. Your father's legacy will complicate things. I'm not asking for special treatment because of his name, sir. Maya's eyes held steady. I'm asking for the chance to prove I deserve to carry it. Pierce studied her for a long moment. He had served with James Sterling briefly in the late 90s, had witnessed firsthand the almost supernatural calm the man brought to impossible situations. The daughter had the same stillness, the same sense of coiled capability held perfectly in check. You'll be bunking in Building 6, he said, sliding a folder across the desk. Training schedule, team roster, operational protocols. We run a tight unit here, Corporal. Everyone pulls their weight. Everyone maintains standards, no exceptions. Understood, sir. I won't pretend you won't face challenges, Pierce continued. Legacy cases always do, but this is a professional unit. Show them what you can do, and you'll earn your place. Yes, sir. Pierce leaned back in his chair. Dismissed. Report to the range at 0600 tomorrow. Gunnery Sergeant Keller will be running qualifications. Maya stood, gathered her folder, and turned to leave. At the door, she paused and looked back. Sir, thank you. Pierce nodded. After she left, he sat alone in his office, looking at James Sterling's record plaque, remembering a man who could wait hours for the perfect shot without moving a muscle, and wondering if patience like that could be inherited or if it had to be learned through pain. Outside, Brennan Doyle refilled his coffee at the water cooler, positioned where the office door's thin walls let conversation carry. He heard Maya Sterling clearly and smiled to himself. James had shown him pictures of his daughter 100 times. Competition trophies, range videos, the pride in his voice unmistakable. Brennan would say nothing. She needed to prove herself on her own terms, but he knew what he was watching, the next chapter of a legacy. Maya's quarters in Building 6 were Spartan and functional. A bed, a locker, a desk, a window that looked out over the training ranges where her father had once proved himself. She set her rifle case down carefully on the bed and placed the footlocker at its foot. For a long moment, she simply stood there, looking at her father's nameplate. Master Sergeant J. Sterling. The letters had worn smooth from years of handling, from deployments to a dozen different corners of the world, from a life spent in service to something larger than self. She opened the footlocker slowly, reverently. The smell hit her first. Gun oil and canvas and something else, something that was just her father. Memories made tangible through scent. Inside, the artifacts of a career spent behind a rifle. Custom parts he had machined himself in the team workshop. Ballistics journals filled with calculations in his precise handwriting. Competition medals from matches she had been too young to attend. Photographs of teams and operations. Faces she didn't recognize standing beside the one face she would never forget. At the bottom of the footlocker, beneath layers of carefully preserved gear, she found what she was looking for. A hidden compartment, exactly where her father had described it in the letter he had sent her during his final deployment. Her fingers found the release mechanism and the false bottom lifted free. 2 letters, both sealed, both addressed in her father's handwriting. The first was labeled simply, "Read first." Maya sat on her bed and opened it with trembling hands. The paper crinkled softly in the quiet room. Her father's handwriting filled the page, as familiar as her own heartbeat. Maya, by now you know they recorded my shot as 1,450 meters. The truth is 1,500 meters. David Morgan was there. He ranged it himself. He'll confirm this if you ask. You're going to surpass me. But first you must earn their respect on your own terms. Don't reveal who you are until you've shown them what you can do. Let your rifle speak before your name does. The second letter is for when you face your impossible shot. You'll know when. I love you. I'm proud of you. Be excellent. Be patient. Be certain. Dad. Maya read the letter 3 times. Then she carefully refolded it and picked up the second envelope. Heavier. The label read, "Open when the shot matters most." She held it for a moment, feeling the weight of words not yet read, of guidance waiting for the right moment. Then she tucked both letters back into the hidden compartment, replaced the false bottom, and closed the footlocker. Her father had left her a roadmap. Now she just had to follow it. The next morning came cold and early. Maya had been awake since 4. Her internal clock calibrated to a rhythm her father had instilled in her before she was old enough to question why. She ran 5 miles along the perimeter fence, her breathing controlled and even throughout, her pace measured and sustainable. Old habits died hard, and her father's voice still echoed in her mind from 1,000 training sessions. The body must be ready before the mind can focus. Physical preparation creates mental clarity. The range sprawled across the eastern section of the base, targets set at varying distances from 50 to 1,000 meters. When Maya arrived at 0530, the sun was just beginning to paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. She was not the first one there. Staff Sergeant Marcus Kane stood near the armory entrance, clipboard in hand, talking with a compact woman whose sharp eyes missed nothing. Gunnery Sergeant Iris Keller had been running range qualifications for 12 years and had developed an instinct for seeing through pretense instantly. Both turned as Maya approached, her boots crunching on gravel in the pre-dawn quiet. "Corporal Sterling," Marcus said. His tone was absolutely flat, stripped of inflection. "You're early." "Yes, Staff Sergeant," Maya replied, setting her rifle case down on the shooting bench with a care that bordered on reverence. Keller nodded at her, expression neutral but observant. "Morning, Corporal. Ready for qualifications?" "Yes, Gunnery Sergeant." Other team members began arriving as the sun broke the horizon. Garrett Voss showed up with Holden Ramsey, both of them laughing about something until they noticed Maya. Their conversation dropped to murmurs, and Maya caught the word nepotism before they moved to the opposite end of the firing line. "All right, listen up," Marcus called out once the team had assembled. "Standard qualifications today: 50 meters prone, 100 kneeling, 200 standing, 500 prone, 5 rounds each position. Corporal Sterling goes first." Maya heard the unspoken challenge in his voice, the way he emphasized her name like it was evidence of something. She moved to the firing line without comment and opened her rifle case. The weapon came together in her hands like pieces of a puzzle she had solved so many times the movements had become muscle memory. Automatic, precise, each component fitting perfectly into place with the quiet clicks and snaps of quality engineering meeting skilled hands. "Nice rifle," Keller commented from behind her. "Custom, Gunnery Sergeant," Maya said, not looking up from her work. "Had it configured after sniper school based on my father's specifications." Marcus watched her movements, searching for hesitation or uncertainty, any sign that she was out of her depth. Instead, he saw hands that moved with absolute confidence, fingers that loaded the magazine with smooth precision, each round seated perfectly with the kind of assurance that came from endless practice. "Range is hot," Marcus announced. "Corporal Sterling, you may commence firing when ready." Maya dropped into prone position. Her body found the ground like water finding level, natural and effortless. She pressed her cheek to the stock, her breathing slowing to the rhythm her father had taught her 20 years ago, when she was barely tall enough to hold a rifle steady. The first target at 50 meters filled her scope, close enough that wind didn't matter, distance irrelevant. She fired 5 rounds in controlled succession, the recoil absorbed into her shoulder, each shot a continuation of her breathing cycle. The targets showed tight groupings, all center mass, clustered in a space smaller than a fist. "Kneeling position," Marcus called. Maya transitioned smoothly, her movements economical and controlled. 5 more rounds, 5 more impacts in the kill zone. The grouping so tight it looked almost accidental, like someone had fired once and the target had somehow replicated the hole. Holden whispered something to Garrett, and both men wore expressions that mixed surprise with something darker, something that looked like resentment building. "Standing 200 meters," Marcus said, and there was a hint of anticipation in his voice now. This was where many shooters struggled, fatigue setting in, the longer distance demanding more precision. The standing position offering no stability except what the shooter's body could provide. Maya stood, adjusted her stance with micro movements invisible to anyone not watching closely, and took her time with each shot. The rhythm slowed. Each trigger press became its own meditation. The targets at 200 meters rang out with each impact, the sounds singing across the distance. Through the spotting scope, Keller watched the groupings remain impossibly tight. 12 years of running qualifications had shown her thousands of shooters attempting this exact sequence. What she was witnessing now was different. This wasn't just competence, this was mastery. 500 meters, prone position, Marcus called, and something had changed in his tone. A slight edge that suggested he had expected different results by now. Maya returned to the ground. Her body settled into position with a kind of stillness that seemed almost unnatural, like she had become part of the earth itself. She made small adjustments to her scope, calculated for wind and distance, with movements so subtle they were barely visible, and fired. 5 rounds, 5 impacts. The sound of steel at 500 meters carrying back across the range with rhythmic precision. Marcus walked to check the targets himself, Keller following. When they returned, Marcus's face was carefully neutral, locked down in the way people's faces locked down when they had to deliver news they didn't want to believe themselves. "Adequate," he said. "You meet minimum standards." Keller said nothing, but her eyes lingered on Maya for a moment longer than necessary. What she had just witnessed was far from merely adequate. It was controlled, efficient, and showed a level of comfort with the weapon that suggested extensive experience, the kind that started young and never stopped. The rest of the team took their turns. Marcus shot well, his groupings tight and consistent, the performance of someone who had dedicated years to the craft. Garrett was competent but rushed his shots slightly, eager instead of patient. Holden showed promise but lacked the discipline required for longer distances. His final grouping at 500 meters scattered across 8 inches. The last to shoot was Chief Petty Officer Brennan Doyle. 48 years old and methodical, he approached the line with the unhurried calm of someone who had made shots like these thousands of times across 3 decades of service. His performance was solid, professional, 17 hits out of 20 possible. After qualifications ended, the team gathered near the armory to clean weapons. Maya worked alone at the far bench, breaking down her rifle with meticulous care that bordered on ritual. Each component examined, cleaned, and reassembled with a kind of attention that spoke to deep respect for the equipment, an understanding that a rifle was not just a tool, but a partner, something that required care and earned trust through proper maintenance. "So," Holden said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "how exactly does someone become a SEAL sniper these days? Is it like a special legacy program now or something?" Garrett laughed, and Marcus didn't stop them, his silence functioning as permission for the mockery to continue. Maya continued her work, her hands steady as she ran a cleaning rod through the barrel with slow, deliberate strokes. At the adjacent bench, Brennan Doyle glanced over at her, then back at his own weapon. 15 years in the teams had taught him to recognize when someone was being tested, when the quiet ones often had the most to prove, and when they usually had the deepest reserves to prove it with. As the morning wore into afternoon, Maya completed her tasks and returned to her quarters. Inside her locker, tucked behind her uniforms, was the photograph in a simple frame. Her father in his Army Ranger uniform, young and proud, a rifle slung over his shoulder. She touched the glass gently, remembering his lessons about patience, about letting skills speak louder than words. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests, new opportunities to prove herself. For now, she would do her job, maintain her standards, and wait for the moment when her true capabilities would matter more than anyone's preconceptions or doubts. From the parking area beyond the range, an older man in civilian clothes lowered his binoculars. Lieutenant Colonel David Morgan had watched James Sterling shoot from this same range 3 decades ago. Now he watched the daughter. Not yet time to make contact. He started his pickup truck and drove away, the bumper sticker reading 1STSFODD, the quiet professionals. The evening found Marcus alone in his office, long after the rest of the team had dispersed to whatever activities filled the hours between training and sleep. The day's qualification sheets were spread across his desk, each one a numerical record of performance, names and scores, objective measurements that should have told a simple story. He picked up Maya Sterling's sheet. The numbers didn't lie. 20 perfect shots out of 20 attempts. Groupings that averaged 0.5 inches at 500 meters. Wind reading that seemed almost supernatural in its accuracy. Performance that exceeded not just minimum standards, but exceeded his own scores. Exceeded everyone's scores. Marcus stared at the paper for a long time, his jaw working as conflicting emotions warred behind his eyes. Then he stood, walked to the small metal trash can in the corner, and held the sheet over it. The lighter sparked on the third try. Flame touched paper, and the evidence of Maya Sterling's exceptional performance began to curl and blacken, numbers disappearing into ash. But even as the paper burned, Marcus couldn't burn away the memory, couldn't unsee what he had witnessed on the range. And in the dancing flame light, his mind carried him back 5 years to a rooftop in Kandahar, where everything went wrong. Tommy had been 24, eager, competent. His spotter, his responsibility. The wind call had seemed solid. The shot had seemed right. Marcus had trusted him completely and squeezed the trigger and watched his teammate take an enemy round to the chest, because the muzzle flash had given away their position. Tommy survived, barely, medical retirement, lives with pain every day, lives with the knowledge that trust had nearly killed him. Marcus watched Maya Sterling's qualification sheet turn to ash and made a decision. He would not trust unproven talent. Not again. Not ever. No matter how good the numbers looked. No matter whose daughter she was. The paper was ash now, black flakes floating in the metal can. Marcus returned to his desk and wrote in the official logbook, Sterling, M. Qualified. No exceptional performance noted. He closed the book, turned off the light, and walked out into the California night, carrying the weight of a lie that felt like the only truth that mattered. The only truth that might keep someone alive. Tomorrow would bring more tests, more chances to prove or disprove, more opportunities for Maya Sterling to show what she could do or fail trying. But tonight, the evidence of her excellence existed only in memory and ash, and Marcus Kane intended to keep it that way for as long as he could. The week that followed settled into a rhythm that felt more like attrition than integration. Maya arrived first to every training session, stayed last to complete her tasks, and spoke only when spoken to. The team's skepticism hadn't softened with time or exposure. If anything, it had crystallized into something more deliberate, more pointed, like they were waiting for her to fail so they could confirm what they had already decided was true. Thursday morning brought physical training. The obstacle course stretched across 2 acres of unforgiving California terrain, walls to scale, rope climbs that left hands raw and bleeding, tire runs that turned ankles into grinding joints of pain, a final sprint that separated those who had trained from those who had merely prepared. The team assembled at the starting line as the sun broke the horizon, painting everything in shades of orange that would have been beautiful if anyone had the luxury of noticing. Marcus stood with his stopwatch and clipboard, his face set in the neutral expression he wore like armor. Standard course run, he announced to the gathered operators. Corporal Sterling, you'll go first. Set the pace for everyone else. Holden grinned at Garrett. The whispered comment was just loud enough to carry across the morning air. This should be good. Maya stepped to the line. Her expression remained unchanged, betraying nothing of what she might be thinking or feeling. Marcus raised his hand, held it for 3 seconds, then dropped it. Go! She exploded forward. Her compact frame covered ground with efficient strides that wasted no energy on excess motion. The first wall came up fast, 8 feet of vertical wood, and she hit it at speed. Momentum carried her up and over with a technique that spoke to countless repetitions, to muscle memory built through years of practice. The rope climb was next. Her arms pulled her body upward with steady power, hand over hand, no wasted motion, no panic. Marcus watched through narrowed eyes as she navigated each obstacle. She wasn't the fastest, but she was smooth, controlled, never rushing or losing focus. When she crossed the finish line, her time was solidly in the acceptable range, respectable if not exceptional. Her chest rose and fell with controlled breaths, sweat darkening her shirt, but her face remained composed. Not bad, Marcus said when she returned to the group. For someone your size, the comment hung in the air, barbed and deliberate. Maya simply nodded, catching her breath with the same measured patience she brought to everything. Thank you, Staff Sergeant, she said evenly. The rest of the team ran the course. Holden struggled on the rope climb, his technique sloppy, burning energy he couldn't afford to waste. Garrett was fast but reckless, nearly losing his footing on the tire run, saving himself at the last second with a stumble that cost him precious seconds. Marcus ran last, his time the best of the group, and he made certain everyone knew it, announcing the numbers with barely concealed satisfaction. That afternoon brought range time again, but this session carried different weight. Gunnery Sergeant Keller had arranged for moving target drills, mechanical systems that slid along rails at varying speeds and distances, simulating the kind of shots that separated competent shooters from exceptional ones. Standard protocol, Keller announced to the assembled team. 200 meters, lateral movement, 5 shots each. Best grouping wins bragging rights. The team took turns and the results painted a clear picture of capability. Holden managed 2 hits out of 5, his timing off, his lead calculations inconsistent. Garrett hit 3, better but still struggling with the mathematics of intersecting trajectories. Marcus landed 4 solid hits, his shots well placed but not exceptional. The performance of someone who had mastered fundamentals but never pushed beyond them into true artistry. Brennan Doyle's turn came next. The old chief approached the line with the unhurried calm of 3 decades' experience. 4 hits out of 5, his patience and professionalism evident in every deliberate movement. Corporal Sterling, Keller called, "You're up." Maya approached the line, loaded her magazine with the same careful precision she applied to everything, and settled into position. The target began its lateral slide, moving left to right at moderate pace. She tracked it with her scope, her breathing slowing to the rhythm that lived beneath conscious thought. She fired. The first shot found center mass, the second followed, then the third, fourth, fifth, each one finding the mark with precision that made Keller lean forward slightly, professional interest overriding her usual detachment. Marcus checked the target through his spotting scope, his jaw tightening with each impact he confirmed. 5 for 5, he announced, his voice carefully neutral, stripped of inflection. Good shooting, Corporal. Keller made a note on her clipboard. Very good shooting. She got lucky, Holden said quietly to Garrett, but not quietly enough. Keller turned her sharp gaze on him. Something to add, Lance Corporal? The question carried the kind of dangerous calm that preceded storms. No, Gunnery Sergeant, Holden replied quickly, suddenly fascinated by his boots. That evening, in the team common area, the mockery took on a new edge, evolved from casual dismissal to something more barbed. Marcus sat with Holden and Garrett, their conversation loud enough to carry across the room, where Maya sat alone, reading a manual on advanced ballistics calculations. I'm just saying, Holden offered, his voice carrying mock innocence. There's got to be some kind of explanation. Nobody shoots like that without special considerations somewhere along the line. You mean like easier qualifications? Garrett suggested. Legacy accommodations? Marcus said nothing, but he didn't correct them either. His silence was permission, tacit approval for speculation that skirted the edge of disrespect. The door opened and Brennan Doyle entered, grabbed coffee from the pot that had been sitting too long, and noticed Maya sitting alone. He had been in the teams long enough to recognize talent when he saw it, and also long enough to recognize when politics were interfering with merit. He considered saying something, then decided against it. She would have to prove herself on her own terms. That was how the teams worked, how they had always worked. Sink or swim, trial by fire. The strong survived and the weak washed out. Maya turned a page in her manual, her expression unchanged. Inside, she felt the familiar weight of isolation pressing down. It was nothing new, nothing she hadn't experienced before. Mathematics become instinct through thousands of hours of practice that started when she was barely tall enough to hold a rifle steady. Her father's voice echoed in memory from a competition when she was 12, frustrated with judges who seemed more interested in her age and gender than her scores. You don't shoot to impress, sweetheart. You shoot because when it matters, when lives depend on it, there's no room for anything less than perfect. Commander Pierce stood before the assembled team with a visitor beside him. Lieutenant Bridget McAllister was 29 and carried herself with the particular confidence of someone who had proven herself repeatedly in environments designed to break people. Her red hair was pulled back severely, her uniform crisp despite the early hour, and her eyes held the competitive gleam of someone who viewed every interaction as a potential contest. Listen up, Pierce announced. Joint training exercise next week. Team 3 versus Team 7. We'll be running combined operations scenarios, including long-range precision work. He gestured to McAllister. Lieutenant McAllister will be coordinating for Team 7. McAllister's eyes swept across the assembled operators, pausing briefly on Maya before moving on. Looking forward to working with you all. Should be an interesting exercise. After that afternoon, Commander Pierce gathered both teams for a detailed briefing on the upcoming exercise. The operation would span 3 days, testing everything from basic marksmanship to complex tactical coordination. But the centerpiece was the sniper competition. Distance shooting, moving targets, environmental challenges, pride and reputation on the line. Team assignments will be posted tomorrow, Pierce announced. Primary and secondary sniper positions for both teams. This is a chance to demonstrate capability and cohesion. Make it count. As the briefing concluded, McAllister made her way across the room to where Maya stood reviewing the exercise parameters. The lieutenant extended her hand with the practiced professionalism of someone who had navigated military hierarchies for a decade. Sterling, she said, looking forward to seeing what you can do out there. Maya shook her hand. Likewise, Lieutenant. What McAllister didn't expect was the absolute calm in Maya Sterling's eyes. The quiet certainty of someone who had nothing left to prove because they already knew their own capabilities completely. That evening, as twilight painted the base in shades of purple and gold, a figure watched from the parking area beyond the training ranges. Lieutenant Colonel David Morgan, retired for 6 years now, sat in his pickup truck with the windows down and a thermos of coffee going cold in the cup holder. He had been watching Maya Sterling for 3 weeks. Not constantly, not obsessively, just periodic check-ins, making sure she was settling in, making sure the promise he had made to James Sterling 10 years ago on a tarmac in Afghanistan was being honored. Through binoculars, he watched Maya running alone. 5 miles at a steady pace, the same routine her father had followed for 25 years. The same discipline, the same dedication. Morgan smiled slightly, took a sip of cold coffee, and started his truck. On the bumper, a faded sticker read, 1STSFODD, the quiet professionals. He drove away as the last light faded from the sky, leaving Maya to her run and her thoughts and her preparation for challenges she didn't yet know were coming. The night before the joint exercise, Marcus gathered his team in the common area for final planning. Maps spread across the table, positions marked, roles assigned, the kind of meticulous preparation that separated professional units from merely adequate ones. "Sterling," Marcus said, his finger tapping a secondary position on the map. "You'll handle the 800-meter targets, standard difficulty. McAllister's team will take the prestige shots at 1,000 plus." Maya looked at the map, at the positioning, at the implicit message being sent. Secondary role, backup position, not trusted with the shots that mattered. "Understood, Staff Sergeant," she said simply. Garrett and Holden exchanged glances, some unspoken communication passing between them that suggested they found the assignment appropriate. The rookie in the rookie position. The legacy case kept away from anything that might expose inadequacy. Only Brennan said nothing, but his eyes lingered on the map for a moment longer than necessary. In 3 decades of operations, he had learned to recognize when talent was being deliberately underutilized, when fear masqueraded as caution, when leaders protected themselves by limiting others. The meeting broke up shortly after, each operator heading off to prepare in their own way. Maya returned to her quarters and sat on her bed, looking at the footlocker that held her father's legacy and her own uncertain future. She thought about opening the second letter, the one labeled for when the shot matters most. But something told her the moment wasn't right yet. The impossible shot was still ahead, still waiting, still testing her patience. Instead, she pulled out her father's training notebook and read entries written 20 years ago. His thoughts on wind reading, his observations about mental discipline, his philosophical reflections on what it meant to be a sniper. Not just a shooter, not just someone who could hit targets, but someone who understood that precision was a calling, that patience was power, that the stillness between heartbeats was where legends were made. Tomorrow would bring the exercise, the first real test, the first chance to show Team 7 and her own team what Maya Sterling could do when given the opportunity. She read until midnight, absorbing her father's wisdom, feeling his presence in the careful handwriting and detailed observations. Then she slept the dreamless sleep of someone whose preparation was complete and whose conscience was clear. The California dawn broke with unusual drama. Heavy clouds rolled in from the Pacific, bringing the kind of weather that made long-range shooting exponentially more difficult. Wind gusted in irregular patterns. Visibility decreased as moisture hung in the air. The kind of conditions that would have forced most recreational shooters to pack up and wait for better days. But SEAL snipers didn't get to choose their weather. They worked in whatever nature provided. Both teams assembled at the range complex as the sun struggled to penetrate the cloud cover. The mood was professional but competitive. Operators checking equipment with extra care, spotters running calculations accounting for the deteriorating conditions. Everyone aware that today's performance would be remembered and discussed for months. Maya set up her position at the 800-meter mark, a respectable distance, challenging enough to require skill, far enough to separate competent from exceptional, but not the prestige positions, not the shots that would be talked about in the team common area for weeks afterward. Bridget McAllister positioned herself at the 1,000-meter line with the confidence of someone who had earned the right to be there through a decade of proven performance. Her spotter was a seasoned chief with 20 years of experience. Her equipment was top tier. Her preparation was meticulous. The exercise began with standard protocols, communication checks, wind readings, target confirmations, all the rituals that turn shooting from simple mechanics into complex operational art. Maya's first target appeared at 800 meters, standard silhouette, stationary, wind gusting at 12 knots with occasional spikes to 15. She settled into her position, found her breathing rhythm, calculated for drift and elevation, and fired. The round found center mass with precision that made Keller, observing from the tower, make a note on her clipboard. "Hit confirmed," came the call over the radio. 4 more targets. 4 more perfect hits. Maya's grouping at 800 meters was tight enough that all 5 impacts could be covered by a standard playing card. Marcus, monitoring from the operations center, felt something twist in his chest. Pride mixed with resentment. Admiration mixed with fear. The same conflicting emotions that had been tearing at him since Maya Sterling arrived, with her famous name and undeniable talent. At the 1,000-meter line, McAllister was working through her own sequence. Solid performance. Professional. 3 hits out of 5, with the 2 misses attributable to wind gusts that shifted unpredictably. Good shooting by any objective standard. Then the radio crackled with McAllister's voice, carrying across the range with barely concealed challenge. "Pierce, I'm calling 1,200-meter shot. Wind's tricky but manageable." A pause, then Pierce's response. "You're cleared, McAllister. Make it count." The range fell silent. 1,200 meters was serious distance, the kind that required not just skill, but a degree of instinct that couldn't be taught in classrooms or manuals. McAllister took her time. 90 seconds of calculations and adjustments, multiple scope corrections, the careful work of someone who understood that rushing at this distance meant failure. The shot rang out. 2 seconds of silence as the round traveled downrange. Then the spotter's confirmation. "Hit. 3 inches left of center. Scoring zone." McAllister's triumphant voice came over the radio. 1,200 confirmed. "Beat that, Sterling." Maya heard it. Everyone heard it. The challenge issued over open channels for maximum effect. The gauntlet thrown down by the veteran to the rookie. The test disguised as competition. Marcus's voice came through Maya's earpiece. Not broadcast, just between them. "Sterling, you want to attempt at 1,200? The question carried weight beyond the words. This was Marcus testing her, seeing if she would overreach, if she would let ego override judgment, if she would fail publicly and prove his fears justified. Silence stretched across the radio frequencies, both teams listening, waiting. "Yes, Staff Sergeant," Maya said calmly. "I'm ready." From Team 7's position, someone laughed. McAllister's voice came through again, not bothering to hide her amusement. "This should be entertaining. Give the kid the participation trophy." Garrett and Holden exchanged nervous glances from their positions. They had trained with Maya for 3 weeks, but had never seen her attempt extreme distance. Had never witnessed what she was actually capable of when the moment demanded everything. Maya moved to the 1,200-meter line. She settled into prone position with movements so economical they seemed almost rehearsed. Brennan Doyle materialized beside her as spotter, his presence unexpected but welcome. "Wind 14 knots, Brennan said quietly, his voice calm as deep water. "Gusting to 17, direction inconsistent." Maya closed her eyes. This was her father's technique, the one he had taught her when she was 10 years old, and struggling to understand how anyone could shoot in conditions that seemed impossibly chaotic. Don't fight the wind. Listen to it. Feel it. Become part of it. She opened her eyes 45 seconds later. "I feel it." 3-second pattern. Her hands made minor adjustments to the scope. Her breathing slowed until it was barely perceptible. The world narrowed to the target, and the wind, and the space between heartbeats where precision lived. She fired. 2.1 seconds of absolute silence. The round traveling downrange through shifting air currents, through layers of humidity and temperature gradients, through all the variables that turned long-distance shooting from science into art. Brennan tracked through his spotting scope, his experienced eye following the trajectory. "Hit," he called, his voice rising slightly with an emotion he couldn't quite suppress. "Perfect center mass." The radio erupted with confusion, cross-chatter, demands for confirmation. Keller's official voice cut through the noise. "Confirmed. Sterling, 1,200 meters, center mass. Setup time, 45 seconds. Half the time McAllister had needed perfect placement versus acceptable placement, the impossible made to look routine. McAllister's voice came over the radio, and for the first time, shock broke through her professional composure. The words that came out would become legend, would be repeated in team common areas and training facilities across the SEAL community for years to come. "What the fuck? You're a sniper?" The question hung in the air like smoke, like revelation, like the moment when assumptions crashed into reality and shattered into pieces too small to reassemble. McAllister was already moving, striding across the range toward Maya's position with the determined gait of someone who needed answers immediately. Both teams began converging on the operations center, the exercise momentarily forgotten in the face of something that demanded attention. Maya removed her helmet as McAllister approached, shook out her hair, let it fall to her shoulders. The moment of reveal after 3 weeks of assumption and misidentification. McAllister stopped mid-stride. Her eyes widened fractionally as understanding crashed over her like a wave. You're a woman?" Maya stood, professional and composed. "Yes, ma'am. Corporal Maya Sterling." The name landed like artillery. Not M. Sterling, anonymous, inassumable, but Maya Sterling, James Sterling's daughter. The legacy case they had all dismissed was standing before them, having just made a shot that most snipers wouldn't attempt in perfect conditions, let alone in weather that was actively hostile to precision. Garrett's whispered curse carried across the suddenly silent range. "Holy shit, M. Sterling. Maya." Holden stood frozen, his face cycling through emotions too quickly to name. Surprise, confusion, the slow dawning realization that they had been calling her him for 3 weeks, that every assumption had been wrong, that every dismissal had been based on seeing what they expected rather than what was actually there. Marcus's face was unreadable, a mask that hid whatever war was raging behind his eyes. 3 weeks of sabotage, 3 weeks of exclusion, 3 weeks of burning evidence and downplaying performance. All of it revealed now as something worse than professional caution, as prejudice, as fear disguised as leadership. Only Brennan Doyle showed the slightest hint of a smile. He had known from day one, had recognized James Sterling's daughter despite the haircut and the androgynous presentation and the team's willful blindness, had said nothing because she needed to prove herself on her own terms. And now she had. McAllister recovered her professional composure with visible effort, extended her hand. "Outstanding shooting, Corporal Sterling. I underestimated you. That won't happen again." Maya shook her hand. "Thank you, ma'am." But the damage was done, the assumptions revealed, the truth exposed in the most public way possible. 3 weeks of deliberate concealment ending not with confession, but with demonstration. With a shot that couldn't be explained away or dismissed or attributed to luck or accommodation. Maya Sterling had let her rifle speak, and it had spoken with a voice that silenced every doubt. The team common area felt smaller than usual. The walls seemed to press in as Team 3 gathered in the aftermath of the exercise, the air thick with unspoken tension and the weight of 3 weeks of assumptions collapsing under the crushing reality of demonstrated excellence. The afternoon light slanted through the windows at angles that made everything look harsh and unforgiving. Maya stood near the door, still in her field gear, rifle case at her feet. She had known this moment was coming since the day she arrived, had prepared for it the way she prepared for difficult shots, with patience, with certainty, with the understanding that some truths could only be delivered through action. Garrett was the first to speak, his voice tight with something that might have been anger or might have been shame. "You lied to us. 3 weeks." Maya's response came calm and measured. "I never lied. You assumed. I didn't correct you." "That's deception," Holden said, but his voice lacked conviction. He was already seeing the holes in his own argument, already understanding that the failure had been theirs, not hers. I hid nothing, Maya said. My name is on every document. My gender is in my file. My qualifications are in my record. You saw what you expected to see. Marcus stood near the back of the room, his jaw working as he processed emotions that had no easy outlet. 3 weeks of sabotage, burned target sheets, impossible standards, exclusion from planning sessions, all of it based on assumptions that had just been revealed as prejudice wearing the mask of professionalism. You played us for fools, Corporal, he said, his voice controlled but carrying an edge of dangerous calm. No, Staff Sergeant. Maya's eyes met his without flinching. I let my skills speak first, like my father taught me. The mention of James Sterling shifted something in the room, made the situation more complex than simple deception or gender politics, made it about legacy and honor and the particular weight that came with carrying a name that everyone knew. Marcus took a step forward. Your father was honest. This is manipulation. My father also taught me to earn respect before demanding it, Maya said. That's what I did. The silence that followed carried its own verdict. Everyone in the room had witnessed the 1,200-meter shot, had seen the 45-second setup, had heard McAllister's shocked response. The evidence was undeniable. The performance spoke louder than any argument. Dismissed, Corporal, Marcus said finally. We'll discuss your future on this team later. Maya gathered her rifle case and left without another word. The door closed behind her with a finality that felt like punctuation on a chapter that hadn't ended so much as transformed into something else entirely. After she left, Brennan Doyle spoke for the first time. His voice carried the weight of 3 decades in the teams and the particular authority of someone who had earned the right to be heard. I served with her father, 4 years, Afghanistan and Iraq. Marcus turned to look at him. You knew? James talked about his daughter constantly, Brennan said. Showed everyone pictures of her at shooting competitions. She was 12 years old, out shooting adults 3 times her age. He paused, let that sink in. She got his patience, his precision, his ability to read wind like it's speaking to him. Why didn't you say anything? Garrett asked. Because she needed to prove herself on her own merit, Brennan said, not ride his name. She did that today. That 1,200-meter shot in those conditions? I've been doing this for 30 years. I couldn't have made that shot. The words hung in the air like an indictment. The old chief, the most experienced operator on the team, freely admitting that the rookie they had spent 3 weeks dismissing was better than him. Better than all of them. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. Not breaking, transforming. The careful walls he had built after Tommy's injury beginning to shift under pressure they were never designed to withstand. 2 hours later, an emergency summons arrived. Commander Pierce's office. Immediate attendance required. When Marcus arrived, he found not just Pierce, but Captain Victoria Shaw from Division, along with a 2-star admiral he recognized from briefings but had never met personally. Vice Admiral Patricia Hendricks was 58 and carried herself with the particular authority of someone who had spent 3 decades making decisions that affected thousands of lives. Her uniform was crisp, despite the late hour, her eyes sharp and assessing. Staff Sergeant Kane, Pierce said, you know Captain Shaw, this is Vice Admiral Hendricks. Marcus came to attention. Ma'am. Hendricks gestured for him to sit. The informality felt somehow more intimidating than strict protocol would have been. We've been watching Corporal Sterling's integration, Shaw said without preamble. Today's performance was exceptional. 1,200 meters in hostile conditions, but the deception raises questions. Marcus felt his chest tighten. This was it, the moment where his sabotage would be exposed, where 3 weeks of burned evidence and manipulated reports would cost him everything. However, Hendricks continued, we're less concerned with how she proved herself than with what she proved. Division has urgent tasking from CENTCOM. A folder landed on the desk between them, top secret stamped across the cover in red. Pierce opened it, revealing satellite imagery and intelligence reports. High-value target, ISIS regional commander, Raqqa suburbs, Syria. Intelligence indicates he's planning coordinated attacks on U.S. Embassy in Ankara. Timeline, 72 hours before he relocates. Shaw picked up the briefing. We need precision elimination before he moves. Analysis shows optimal shot distance, 1,400 meters. Environmental conditions, hostile, urban terrain. The numbers settled over Marcus like physical weight. 1,400 meters, urban environment, lives hanging in the balance. Based on today's performance, Hendricks said, her voice carrying the finality of decisions already made. Corporal Sterling is primary sniper for this operation. Marcus stood abruptly. Ma'am, with respect, Shaw cut him off with a raised hand. Staff Sergeant Kane, your personal feelings are noted and irrelevant. This is about capability and mission success. Captain, this team's cohesion is built on 5 years of trust, Marcus said, hearing the desperation in his own voice and hating it. Inserting an operator we've worked with for 3 weeks into live combat, she outperformed your entire team and Team 7's best shooter, Shaw said. She's proven. On a range, Marcus pressed, in controlled conditions, combat is different. Which is why you'll have 72 hours to integrate her properly, Hendricks said. Her tone brooked no argument. Make it work, Staff Sergeant. Pierce leaned forward. Target possesses actionable intelligence on 3 planned attacks. If he escapes, civilian casualties are estimated at 200 plus. This isn't a training exercise. This is why we exist. The weight of those numbers crushed any remaining argument Marcus might have made. 200 lives, families, children, all of it hanging on one shot, one shooter. Yes, ma'am, he said through a jaw so tight it ached. Wheels up 0300 Thursday, Shaw said. Brief your team, prepare your operator. And Staff Sergeant? She waited until his eyes met hers. If personal conflicts interfere with mission success, I will personally ensure you never lead another team. Am I clear? Crystal clear, ma'am. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of hostile preparation. Marcus ran tactical briefs that addressed everyone except Maya, discussed insertion protocols and extraction procedures and contingency plans while deliberately avoiding eye contact with the one operator whose performance would determine success or failure. Maya prepared alone, checked and rechecked her equipment with the meticulous care her father had instilled in her. Ran through calculations until the numbers became background noise to more important considerations. Wind patterns in urban environments, heat signatures affecting air density, the 1,000 variables that turn shooting from mechanical process into something approaching art. On the second day, Bridget McAllister appeared in the armory where Maya was working. The lieutenant's arrival was unexpected enough to make Maya's hand move instinctively toward her sidearm before recognition set in. Easy, McAllister said, hands visible and empty. Just wanted to talk. Maya relaxed fractionally. Lieutenant, they're freezing you out, McAllister said. Not a question. An observation backed by a decade of experiencing the same thing. I noticed. McAllister pulled up a chair, sat down uninvited. I did 3 deployments before my team accepted me. Took a firefight in Helmand Province, where I saved our CO's life. That's what it took for them to see past the gender. Maya continued her equipment check, but she was listening. You're going to have to prove yourself in combat, McAllister continued. The range isn't enough for them. It's not fair, it's not right, but it's reality. How do you handle it? Maya asked. Being female in the SEAL community. McAllister's smile held no humor. I stopped trying to make them like me. I focused on making them need me. Make yourself indispensable. That's the only currency that matters. After McAllister left, Maya sat alone in the armory for a long time, thinking about indispensability and need, and the difference between respect given and respect earned. Her father had earned respect through decades of consistent excellence. She had 3 weeks and one combat operation. The math was simple. The execution would be anything but. The night before deployment, Maya was running final drills on the range when a figure emerged from the darkness beyond the lights. Her hand found her sidearm before her conscious mind registered the threat assessment. "Easy, Corporal," a familiar voice called. "I'm a friendly." Lieutenant Colonel David Morgan stepped into the light, civilian clothes marking his retired status, but his bearing still carrying the unmistakable stamp of decades in special operations. Maya lowered her weapon. "Colonel Morgan?" "Just David now," he said, moving closer. "Retired 6 years ago. But I've been watching you." "I remember you," Maya said. "From my father's funeral. You gave me his dog tags." Morgan nodded. "I was with your father in Afghanistan, the operation where he died. He made me promise 3 things if he didn't come back." Maya felt her chest tighten. 10 years of wondering about her father's final moments. 10 years of official reports that read like sterile summaries rather than the death of a man she loved. "First," Morgan said, "tell you the official record is wrong. 1,500 meters, not 1,450. I ranged it myself. Second, you were ready. He trained you as well as any shooter could be trained. Third," Morgan pulled an envelope from his jacket, "give you this when you faced real combat." The envelope was worn from years of carrying, Maya's name written in her father's precise handwriting, different from the letters in her footlocker. Another piece of him preserved across a decade of absence. "Your father wrote this the night before his last mission," Morgan said, "made me carry it for 10 years. He said, only give this to her when she's facing the shot that matters." Maya took the envelope with trembling hands. "Why now? Why not when I enlisted?" "Because he wanted you to earn your way here, not write his name. You've done that." Morgan's expression softened. "Tomorrow, in Syria, you're facing that shot, the one he prepared you for your entire life." After Morgan left, Maya sat alone on the range and opened the letter. Her father's voice speaking across the years, across death itself, reaching forward to this exact moment. "My dearest Maya, if you're reading this, you're about to face combat as a sniper. I'm proud beyond words. The shot you're about to take will define you, not because of distance or difficulty, but because lives depend on it. Remember, your preparation is complete. Trust it absolutely. The wind will lie to your instruments. Listen with your body. When the moment comes, there will be noise, chaos, doubt. Silence all of it. Find the stillness inside yourself. That's where the shot lives. I love you. I believe in you. Make the shot that matters. Dad." Maya read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and placed it in the pocket over her heart. Tomorrow she would carry her father's words into combat, would make the shot he had spent 20 years preparing her to make, would prove that his faith had not been misplaced. The helicopter insertion came at 0300 under a moonless sky that turned the Syrian landscape into abstract shadows and uncertain shapes. The team sat in silence, each operator locked into their own pre-combat rituals. Gear checks, breathing exercises, the particular meditation that came from knowing bullets were about to fly. Maya sat near the door, her rifle case between her knees, Brennan Doyle beside her as a sign spotter. Across the cargo bay, Marcus watched her with an expression that might have been concern or might have been calculation. The distinction no longer seemed to matter. 2 minutes, the crew chief called over the rotor noise. The bird dropped fast, flaring hard at the last second before touching down on a rooftop 3 blocks from the target compound. The team moved out in practiced silence, each operator flowing to their assigned position like water finding the path of least resistance. Maya and Brennan took the overwatch position, 1,400 meters from the target, a rooftop with clear line of sight but exposure to wind that gusted unpredictably through the urban canyon. Marcus led the assault element to their staging area, ready to breach on her signal. The setup took 12 minutes. Rifle positioned, scope calibrated, wind readings taken and retaken as conditions shifted moment to moment. Brennan worked his spotting scope with the calm efficiency of 3 decades experience. Wind erratic, he said quietly. 15 to 18 knots, direction shifting every 30 to 45 seconds. Maya settled behind her rifle and closed her eyes, found the pattern beneath the chaos. Her father's technique, ingrained through 2 decades. "I've got it," she said. "Target building shows multiple heat signatures," Brennan reported. Waiting for positive ID. The minutes stretched. 05:15 approached, the time when their intelligence indicated the target would appear for morning prayer, the narrow window that made this operation possible. "Movement," Brennan said. "Balcony, 2nd floor." Maya opened her eyes and acquired the target through her scope. Male, correct age, distinctive features matching the intelligence photos. Abu Khalid al-Masri, the man whose death would save hundreds of lives. "Positive ID," Brennan confirmed. Maya's breathing slowed. The world narrowed to the crosshairs in the wind and the space between heartbeats. 1,400 meters. Lives hanging in the balance. Everything her father had taught her condensed into this single moment. Marcus's voice came through her earpiece, tight with tension. "Sterling, we have 30-second window. Shoot or abort." She didn't respond. Didn't need to. The shot would speak for itself. The wind patterns cycled. 3 seconds hard, 2 seconds calm. She waited for the calm, patient as stone, while seconds burned away. 20 seconds remaining. The calm came. Her finger found the trigger. Gentle pressure. Not a pull, but a squeeze. The rifle spoke. 1.4 seconds of flight time. The round traveling through shifting air and urban heat, and all the variables that separated theory from reality. "Hit confirmed," Maya said, tracking through her scope. "Target down." Brennan's voice carried satisfaction. "Kill confirmed. Mission success." But even as the words left his mouth, the world exploded behind them. The rooftop door that should have been clear erupted with enemy fighters. 6 men, AK-47s, the trap springing closed. "Contact rear," Brennan shouted, already spinning to engage. "Ambush! Intel was compromised." Maya rolled from her position, bringing her rifle around. The weapon designed for precision at extreme distance was suddenly a close-quarters liability. She dropped it and drew her sidearm in one fluid motion, muscle memory from 1,000 training repetitions taking over. The firefight was brutal and close. Muzzle flashes in the pre-dawn darkness, the sharp crack of rifle fire echoing off concrete. Brennan took down 2 fighters, but they kept coming, pressing forward with the desperate aggression of men who knew they had the numbers. Marcus's voice cut through the chaos on the radio. "Sniper team situation." "Ambushed," Brennan called back, firing methodically. "Rooftop compromised. Multiple hostiles." "All elements collapse to extraction," came the command from base. "Mission success. Withdraw to LZ." Marcus stood with his assault team at the staging area. The logical decision, clear and simple. Mission complete. Extract to safety. Leave the sniper team to fight their way out or die trying. He made a different choice. "Negative," Marcus said into his radio. "I'm going for the sniper team." "Marcus, that's not the plan." Garrett's protest cut off as Marcus was already moving. Marcus broke from the assault element and sprinted toward Maya's building. 3 blocks through hostile territory. Enemy fire tracking his movement. He hit the stairs and took them 3 at a time. His old shoulder injury screaming protest that he ignored completely. He reached the rooftop as enemy fighters closed on Maya's position. His rifle spoke with controlled violence, dropping the first hostile, then the second. Drawing fire to himself as Maya and Brennan repositioned. An enemy round caught him, left shoulder. The impact spun him, but didn't drop him. He kept firing. "Sterling! Doyle! On me!" he shouted over the gunfire. Maya provided covering fire as they withdrew, her sidearm finding targets with the same precision she brought to long-distance work. The 3 of them fought down 6 floors, each landing contested, each turn potentially deadly. They reached street level with enemy fighters still in pursuit. The extraction helicopter was 2 blocks away, rotors already turning, taking fire from multiple positions. Maya half-carried Marcus, his blood soaking through her uniform, his weight heavy against her shoulder. Brennan covered their 6, his rifle running dry as they reached the bird. They threw themselves aboard and the helicopter lifted immediately, rounds pinging off the fuselage as Syrian ground dropped away beneath them. In the cargo bay, Maya pressed field dressings to Marcus's shoulder while the crew chief worked to stabilize him. His face was pale, his breathing labored, but his eyes were clear. "You made the shot," he said, his voice weak but steady. "Under pressure, I was wrong about you." Maya's hands pressed harder against the wound, trying to stop bleeding that seemed determined to continue. "You came back for me. That's what matters, Staff Sergeant." Marcus's hand found hers, squeezed once. "Your father would be proud, not just of your shooting, of who you are." The helicopter carried them toward safety, toward medical care, toward a future that looked different than it had just hours before. Behind them, Syria fell away into distance in memory. Ahead, something unexpected waited. The medical bay at Coronado Naval Hospital smelled like antiseptic and old coffee. 36 hours after Syria, Marcus Kane sat propped up in bed, his left shoulder wrapped in enough bandages to outfit a small battalion. The bullet had passed through clean, missing bone and major vessels by millimeters. "Lucky," the doctor said. Marcus knew better. Maya Sterling's covering fire had kept the enemy from finishing what they started. The door opened and the team filed in. Garrett first, carrying contraband pizza. Holden behind him with an expression that managed to be both sheepish and genuine. Brennan brought coffee that was probably against hospital regulations. "Staff Sergeant," Garrett said, setting the pizza on the rolling table. "Thought you might be tired of hospital food." Marcus managed a smile despite the pain medication making his head fuzzy. "Appreciated." He looked past them to where Maya stood in the doorway, uncertain. "Sterling, get in here." She moved into the room, and the team made space for her in a way that felt natural rather than forced. 3 weeks of exclusion erased by a rooftop firefight and a choice made under fire. "I owe you an apology," Marcus said. His voice was rough but steady. "A real one this time, not the bullshit I gave you in the common area." "You already apologized in the helicopter," Maya started. "That was gratitude for saving my life," Marcus interrupted. "This is different. I sabotaged you from day one, burned your qualification sheets, excluded you from planning, set impossible standards. All because 5 years ago I trusted the wrong person and Tommy paid the price." He paused, gathering words that didn't come easily. "But you weren't Tommy. You were better than all of us and I was too scared to see it. That 1,200-meter shot should have told me everything. The 1,400-meter shot in Syria confirmed it. You're the real deal, Sterling. Your father would be proud." Maya felt something unknot in her chest. "You came back for me. That's what matters." "Team doesn't leave team behind," Brennan said quietly. "Welcome to the family, Maya." The use of her first name carried more weight than any formal recognition. She had earned her place not through legacy or accommodation, but through demonstrated excellence when it mattered most. The door opened again and Commander Pierce entered, followed by Captain Shaw and a woman Maya recognized from intelligence briefs. Vice Admiral Patricia Hendricks, 2 stars gleaming on her collar. "Staff Sergeant Kane," Pierce said. "Good to see you alive." "Working on it, sir," Marcus replied. Hendricks moved to the foot of the bed, her expression unreadable. "Syria operation was textbook. Target eliminated, 0 collateral damage. Team extracted under fire. Captain Shaw has submitted commendation recommendations for everyone involved." "Thank you, ma'am," Marcus said. "But we're not here about Syria." Hendricks turned to Maya. "Corporal Sterling, your performance has raised some questions at division, specifically about the limits of current training doctrine." Maya felt the room's attention shift to her. "Ma'am?" Shaw pulled out a tablet, called up data that made Maya's eyes widen. "Your qualification scores, moving target performance, the 1,200-meter shot in hostile weather, the 1,400-meter combat kill under pressure." She paused. "These numbers suggest capabilities beyond what current programs are producing." "We want to test that hypothesis," Hendricks said. "Division is implementing something we're calling Apex Protocol. Single shot, 1,500 meters, worst-case environmental conditions. Observed by Joint Chiefs, SOCOM Command, and international partner forces." The number landed like a physical blow. 1,500 meters, her father's true distance. The shot he'd made twice in his career and carried to his grave. "When, ma'am?" Maya asked. "Friday, 0600. Hendricks's expression softened fractionally. "Same ridge your father used in 1994. If you succeed, it validates new training methodology across all branches. Sterling method becomes standard doctrine. And if I fail, then we have data suggesting current programs are adequate." Shaw's tone made it clear what she thought of that outcome. "But I don't think you're going to fail, Corporal." After they left, the team sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Garrett spoke. 1,500 meters, that's legend territory." "She can make it," Marcus said with absolute certainty. "I've seen what she can do when it matters." That evening, alone in her quarters, Maya opened her footlocker and retrieved the second letter, the one labeled "Open when the shot matters most." Her hands trembled slightly as she broke the seal that had remained intact for 11 years. Her father's handwriting filled the page, each word carefully chosen. "My dearest Maya, if you're reading this, you're facing the 1,500-meter shot, the one that will define you. I made this shot twice in my career, once in 1994 in training under controlled conditions. They recorded it as 1450 because the brass thought 1,500 was unverifiable. Once in 2014 in Afghanistan, under fire, to save 32 lives. That shot cost me everything, but I would make it again without hesitation. You're going to make this shot too, not because you're my daughter, because you're Maya Sterling, and you've spent 20 years preparing for exactly this moment. Your preparation is complete. Trust it, absolutely. The wind will lie to your instruments. Listen with your body the way I taught you. Find the rhythm beneath the chaos. When the moment comes, there will be noise, pressure, doubt, silence, all of it. Find the stillness inside yourself. That's where the shot lives. That's where legends are made. Don't chase my shadow, sweetheart. I trained you to cast your own light. The world doesn't need another James Sterling. It needs the first Maya Sterling. Be excellent. Be patient. Be certain. I love you more than any shot I ever made. I'm proud of you for getting here. Now go show them what Sterling really means. Dad." Maya read the letter until the words blurred. Then she folded it carefully and placed it in her breast pocket, over her heart, next to her father's dog tags. Friday morning arrived with weather that would have canceled most operations. Heavy clouds rolled in from the Pacific, bringing wind that gusted between 20 and 25 knots, with direction changes that defied prediction. Rain threatened but held off, leaving the air heavy with moisture that would affect ballistics in ways that required instinct more than calculation. The ridge where her father had made history 30 years ago was crowded now. Division observers with technical equipment, brass from every branch, media crews positioned at respectful distance. Both Team 3 and Team 7 present as witnesses. McAllister stood with Maya's team, a show of respect that transcended inter-team rivalry. Maya set up in the exact position her father had used. Brennan beside her as spotter, Marcus there too despite his injury, standing behind them with his arm in a sling, but his presence solid and supportive. The target sat 1,500 meters downrange, barely visible even through the scope. The wind made the grass bend and recover in patterns that looked random, but carried hidden rhythm for those who knew how to listen. Conditions are hostile, Brennan said quietly. Wind 20 to 25 knots. Direction shifting every 30 to 45 seconds. This is going to be difficult. Maya settled behind her rifle. I know. She had 3 attempts, standard protocol for shots at this distance in these conditions. The observers would measure everything, record everything, use the data to determine whether one exceptional performance in Syria had been skill or statistical anomaly. 18 minutes passed. Maya waited, utterly still, reading winds she couldn't see but could feel. A window opened. She prepared to fire, then stopped. Not yet, she said. The window closed. Observers murmured. Maya ignored them, patient as stone, trusting instinct over pressure. 22 minutes later, another window. This time she fired. 2.1 seconds of flight time. Brennan tracking through his scope. Miss, he called. 6 inches left. Winds shifted mid-flight. 1 attempt remaining. Admiral Hendricks leaned close to Shaw. Can she do this? We're about to find out, ma'am. 25 minutes of absolute silence. Maya closed her eyes completely, shutting out the observers and the pressure and the legacy, finding the place inside herself where her father's voice still lived. The wind is alive, sweetheart. Listen to it. Feel it. Become part of it. Her eyes opened. She had found it. The pattern beneath chaos. 3 seconds hard wind. 2 seconds calm. The rhythm as regular as a heartbeat for those patient enough to find it. The cycle began. Hard, 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 calm. She fired. The round left the barrel and time seemed to slow. 1,500 meters of distance to cover. 2.1 seconds of flight through shifting air and moisture and all the variables that separated theory from reality. Brennan tracked it the whole way, watched it arc through impossible conditions, watched it find its mark. Hit! His voice broke slightly. Perfect center mass. The ridge erupted. Cheers from both teams, observers confirming with instruments, media cameras capturing the moment when Maya Sterling matched her father's legend and proved that excellence could be inherited, trained, and demonstrated when it mattered most. Admiral Hendricks walked over personally. Corporal Sterling, new installation record, 1,500 meters, extreme environmental conditions, outstanding shooting. Thank you, ma'am. Effective immediately, Sterling method is approved for implementation across all SEAL sniper programs. Hendricks extended her hand. Welcome to history, Staff Sergeant Sterling. The promotion came through that afternoon. Corporal to Staff Sergeant in recognition of combat performance and the demonstration that would change training doctrine for a generation. 1 year later, Staff Sergeant Maya Sterling stood before 20 new students at the Advanced Scout Sniper School. The facility had been built specifically to implement the Sterling method, to take her father's techniques and her own innovations and multiply them across hundreds of operators who would carry that knowledge into the field. Marcus Kane served as senior instructor now, his shoulder healed and his perspective transformed. The man who had burned evidence in fear now taught patience and trust with the zeal of the converted. Brennan Doyle ran the spotting program. McAllister came as a guest instructor monthly. The rivalry evolved into mutual respect and professional partnership. The memorial wall showed 2 photographs now, father and daughter. 2 records at 1,500 meters, separated by 30 years but united in excellence. Below them a plaque read, Sterling Method, Standard Doctrine, USSOCOM 2025. My name is Staff Sergeant Maya Sterling, she told the assembled students. The man on that wall was my father. He held this record for 30 years. Last year, I matched it. This school exists to teach you to surpass us both. A young woman in the front row raised her hand. Ma'am, what's the secret? Maya smiled, thinking of her father's letters and Morgan's promises and the long journey from grief to legacy. There's no secret, Just preparation, patience, certainty that when the moment comes, you'll be ready. My father taught me that. Now I'm teaching you. She led them to the range where targets waited at impossible distances, where wind patterns would challenge and conditions would test, and every shot would be an opportunity to prove that excellence was not accident or accommodation, but the result of preparation meeting opportunity. As the students settled into their positions, Maya touched the dog tags around her neck. Her father's tags, worn smooth from a decade of carrying them, a reminder that legacy was not about matching achievements, but about multiplying impact. Every student who graduated from this school would carry a piece of James Sterling forward, a piece of Maya Sterling. The knowledge that precision was a calling and patience was power, and that the stillness between heartbeats was where legends were made. The sun broke through the clouds, painting the range in shades of gold. Maya watched her students and saw the future, not just of one family's legacy, but of a method that would outlive them all, that would save lives in conflicts not yet imagined, that would prove excellence could be taught, trained, and passed forward to those willing to do the work. Her father had cast a long shadow, but she had done what he asked. She had cast her own light. And now that light would shine through every operator who trained here, through every shot made at impossible distance under hostile conditions, through every life saved because someone made the shot that mattered. Maya Sterling. Not just James Sterling's daughter, but a sniper in her own right, an instructor, a legacy multiplied rather than merely inherited. The rifle range echoed with gunfire as students made their first attempts at distance shooting. Some would succeed, some would fail. All would learn. And in that learning, her father's voice would echo forward into a future he never lived to see, but had helped create with every lesson he had taught his daughter. The shot that mattered most was not the one at 1,500 meters. It was this one, the passing of knowledge, the multiplication of excellence, the legacy that never stopped growing because it was planted in fertile ground and tended with care. Maya smiled and walked down the line, correcting form and offering encouragement, carrying forward the work her father had started and making it her own with every word, every lesson, every student who would go on to save lives because someone had taught them that excellence was possible. The journey that began on a tarmac in Afghanistan 11 years ago had led her here, to this moment, to this purpose, to a legacy that would outlive them all. And somewhere, she knew her father was watching, proud not just of the shots she had made, but of the teacher she had become. The work continued, the legacy grew, and Maya Sterling stood at the center of it all, casting light into the future, one student at a time.